My name is Selene. I am 34 years old, and I live with my husband, Simon, and our 2 children. When I think about my life, I always start with my childhood. I grew up in a very strict home. My parents believed that rules were more important than laughter. I was not allowed to play outside, not allowed to have friends, and not allowed to dream. I often sat by the window, watching other children play, wishing I could join them. I felt invisible, like I was living in a small world built by fear and silence. When I went to college, I met Simon. He was the opposite of everything I had known. He was warm, funny, and confident. He told me I was beautiful, that I deserved to smile. For the first time, I felt seen. Simon made me laugh when life felt too heavy. He told me that love could make everything better. I believed him. When I turned 18, Simon asked me to marry him. He said we would build a family, a life full of happiness. I loved him deeply and trusted his words. So, I left my studies behind and became his wife. At that time, I thought I had found freedom. I didn't know that my new cage had just begun to close. The first years of my marriage were beautiful. Simon was loving and gentle. He brought me flowers after work, held my hand during evening walks, and whispered sweet words that made me feel safe. We laughed together, dreamed about our future, and talked about having children. When our daughter Judy was born, Simon cried with joy. 2 years later, we had a son named Tom. Our home was filled with the sound of tiny footsteps and children's laughter. I thought we were the happiest family in the world. But slowly, things began to change. Simon started to notice everything I did, what I wore, where I went, and who I talked to. One morning, I put on a red dress, and he said, "Change it. It's too much." When I met a friend for coffee, he became angry. He said, "You don't need friends. You have me." At first, I thought he was just protective. I told myself it was love, that he cared too much. But soon, I felt something different growing inside me. It was not love. It was fear. I began to watch his face before I spoke, afraid of saying the wrong thing. The laughter that once filled our home started to fade. The man who once made me feel free was now building invisible walls around me, one word at a time. The conflict began quietly, like a storm forming in the distance. At first, Simon only raised his voice. Then the shouting became louder, more frequent. One evening, I cooked dinner for him, hoping to bring back the warmth we once had. But when he tasted the food, he threw the plate against the wall. "You can't do anything right," he yelled. My hands shook. I apologized even though I had done nothing wrong. Days later, it happened. Simon slapped me. The sound echoed through the room, followed by silence. I touched my cheek in disbelief. The man who once promised to protect me had just broken me. I cried all night, but in the morning, I still made him breakfast. I told myself it was just one mistake, that love meant forgiveness. I went to my parents for help, tears running down my face. "Please," I said, "I can't live like this." But my mother only sighed. "You are married now, Selene. Every woman must endure." Those words felt heavier than the bruise on my face. I returned home, feeling smaller than before. Simon apologized, brought me flowers, and said he would change. For a short time, he did. But soon, his coldness returned. I discovered he was seeing another woman. When I confronted him, he laughed and said, "She loves me more than you ever did." My chest tightened, and I felt something inside me break. A few months later, Simon joined the army. I thought maybe the distance would help us heal. But one night, he called. His voice was calm, almost distant. "Selene," he said, "I found someone new." My heart stopped. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Days turned into weeks. I cried silently at night, holding our children close. I told myself I would not forgive him again. But when he called months later saying, "I made a mistake, Selene. Please take me back," my heart betrayed my mind. I said yes. I believed love could fix him. I believed I could fix him. But I was wrong. Each time I forgave him, a part of me disappeared. I was no longer the girl who dreamed of freedom. I was a woman trapped in her own love story, one that hurt more than it healed. Selene tried to save what was left of her marriage, hoping that love could still change him. But Simon did not change. He still came home with a cold face, still spoke words that cut deeper than any wound. "You're useless, Selene," he would say. "You can't even make me happy." Each time he said it, something inside her grew numb. One morning, Selene stood in front of the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger. Her hair was pulled tight, her eyes empty, her shoulders small and tired. She whispered, "Where did I go?" For years, she had lived for others, for her parents, for her husband, for her children, but never for herself. The reflection in the mirror didn't just show her face, it showed her silence. That afternoon, there was a knock on the door. It was Sarah, her new neighbor, holding 2 cups of tea. "You look tired," Sarah said softly. "Come, sit with me for a while." Selene wanted to say no, but something in Sarah's eyes felt safe. They sat together, talking for hours. Sarah listened, really listened, and for the first time in years, Selene's words found a home. "You are not alone," Sarah told her. "You are stronger than you think. You can start again." Those simple words felt like sunlight breaking through a window that had been closed for too long. A few weeks later, with Sarah's help, Selene began baking cakes at home. It was small at first, a few cupcakes for neighbors, then birthday cakes for friends. She felt alive again. Every time she mixed flour and sugar, she felt she was also rebuilding herself. Then Simon found out. He came home angry, his voice sharp and loud. "Why are you doing this?" he shouted. "You don't need to work. You're my wife. You stay home." Selene looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not power, but fear. She spoke slowly, her voice calm but firm. "I need to do this for myself and for our children." For the first time, Simon had no words. The silence between them was different, not heavy with fear, but filled with her newfound strength. That night, after he went to bed, Selene stood by the window and breathed in the cool air. For years, she had lived in a cage built from love and fear. Now, for the first time, the door was open. And even if she hadn't stepped out yet, she knew, she finally could. Selene began to rebuild her life, one small step at a time. Every morning she woke up early, baked cakes, and sent Judy off to school with a smile. Little Tom stayed beside her, laughing as she worked in the kitchen. The sweet smell of bread and sugar filled the house, a scent that once meant survival, now meant hope. Her business started to grow. Neighbors told their friends, and soon she had more orders than she could handle. But more than the money, it was the feeling of purpose that healed her. She was no longer just someone's wife or someone's mother. She was Selene, a woman who had survived, who had learned to stand on her own. One afternoon, she looked in the mirror again. This time, she saw someone different, strong, confident, alive. She cut her hair short, wore a floral dress, and painted her lips a soft shade of red. When Judy saw her, she smiled brightly and said, "Mom, you look happy." Selene hugged her daughter tightly and whispered, "I am, sweetheart. I really am." Simon still had moments of anger, but Selene was no longer afraid. When he shouted, she no longer cried. Instead, she looked him in the eyes and said firmly, "If you hurt me again, I will leave." He stared at her in silence, realizing that the woman standing before him was no longer the one he could control. Selene did not know if their marriage could ever be whole again. But she knew something far more important: she was whole. She had found her voice, her strength, and her peace. And for the first time in her life, that was enough. Selene's voice softens, carrying the weight of wisdom earned through pain and courage. "I learned that love without respect is not love at all. You cannot fix someone who refuses to change, but you can rebuild yourself. I used to think strength meant staying, but now I know real strength is walking away when love turns into pain." She reflects that she no longer regrets the years she lost. Every tear, every lonely night, every moment of fear shaped her into the woman she is today, stronger, wiser, and free. Selene looks around her small kitchen, where sunlight touches every corner. Judy and Tom are laughing, eating slices of her freshly baked cake. The sound of their laughter fills the room with warmth. She smiles, realizing that peace does not come from perfection, but from choosing to live again after being broken. She whispers softly, more to herself than anyone else, "This is what happiness feels like. Not loud, not perfect, but real." The story closes with the image of a woman who once felt trapped, now surrounded by love, not from the man who broke her, but from the life she rebuilt with her own hands. It is not the end of her story. It is her new beginning. If you liked this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more touching English stories that help you learn English through story and understand real-life lessons.